Hello, I'm Colin, and welcome to The Ongoing Race. Race and diversity within sports and sports media continues to be a hot topic today as stereotypes of the past are being debunked. Times have changed. Today, minorities and women showcase their talents more than ever before. Where I once searched for more relatable sports media content and more blacks within sports media, I now find platforms such as ESPN's The Undefeated and sports journalists Jamel Hill and Michael Smith, among many others. Traditionally, the quarterback position is a white position, but today we have Cam Newton and Deshaun Watson as the reigning NFL MVP and NCAA Quarterback of the Year. Traditionally, the running back position is a black position, but today we have Christian McCaffrey, the NCAA record holder for all-purpose yards in a season. As I see this evolution within sports media along with many others, I now find an interest in seeing how we as a society can continue the conversation and progression of race and diversity within media and sports. Race and diversity within sports and media is a conversation that's ongoing. Stereotyping and framing of athletes, as well as the evolution of sports and media, is something that continues to impact us today. It's as if we're running an ongoing race with these topics. How or when do we get to the finish line? Well, with this project, I hope to bridge the gap between the media and the audience, give you an in-depth listen and a better understanding of sports, media, and race as you know it today. The way that we access news has changed. Newspapers and traditional forms of media are on the decline. Newspapers have gone digital. Similarly, the demographics of sports have changed. If the forms of media, sports, and athletes have changed, shouldn't we expect the coverage of athletes and sports to change as well? With the help of insight from 4 sports journalists who have experience within various mediums, including radio, print, television, and academia, I will attempt to address what needs to happen and what is happening in the ongoing race of sports and media. Colin here with a segment of The Ongoing Race. Here we have Mr. Michael Cauble, who is the sports director for WBRZ News 2 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He joined the WBRZ team as a sports intern in September of 1997. In 2009, the Associated Press awarded Michael with 3rd place honors for the best sportscast. In 2008, he was awarded 2nd place in the category, and in 2012, the Associated Press awarded Michael with the top honor of best sportscast. Mr. Michael Cauble of WBRZ Sports 2, sports director. How long have you been in that position?
Oh, let's see. I've had that job since 2004. I've been in sports since 2000, and I've been at Channel 2 since 1997.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, were you even born then?
Yes, 5 years old.
All right, good deal. Good.
So you mentioned that you had that job since 2002. Are you a Baton Rouge native?
No, my dad was in the military, so I actually moved all around. I lived in Phoenix, I lived in Washington, D.C., and then I lived in Germany. And I came from Germany right to LSU, started school in 93.
So do you think that upbringing and your background, did it affect the way of just going through college and how
Absolutely.
are you doing things?
Yeah, I mean, there's anybody in the military, it's a little different, but I also had the luck to live in different regions of the United States, so I was exposed to different people, different ideas, different ways of life, different climate, different topography, the whole nine. I mean, I was out in the desert in Phoenix with mostly Hispanics. I was on the East Coast, with mostly black people. And then I was in Germany where it was kind of a mix. It's like we all came from different places. And the cool thing about being in the military is that while people have higher ranks than you, there's not a real elitism, because we're all kind of stuck in the same plight. So when I came to LSU, it was definitely eye-opening. I'll say that much.
With you call the golden age of LSU sports, do you think that it makes your job and also the relationship between the media and the athletic department more important than it was before, or how do you think that's changed?
I think technology has somewhat diminished my job because there's so many more venues that people can consume their sports with now, whether it be online, print, blogs such as this, airwaves, what have you. But I also think it's made it more difficult because now it is a business and people have to protect their business interests. So it's become a little bit more restrictive, a little less access. You'll see the school allow the access to their people because they want to drive the message They want to get the clicks. They want to generate the revenue. So
Right.
from that sense, it makes sense, but it is a little bit more disappointing because you'd love to be a part of that collaborative effort.
Okay, and kind of changing subjects just a tad bit. From a media standpoint, there's been a newfound push to get diversity, whether it's race diversity or as far as getting more minorities or also more women. You have seen more women on the major networks such as ESPN. How have you seen a diversity or evolution change within media since you started?
It's every day since I've worked there. I mean, it's not new. When I first started there, it was women, and then it crossed over. Let me just say that into blacks, and then it was Hispanics or Asians. And so I think that there's always that niche audience that you're trying to look for. And here in Baton Rouge, we'll just use it as an example. I mean, the city is almost half black, half white. So you really need to represent that half of the city. And I think it's been underrepresented. I mean, I don't think there's any argument about that, right?
Right.
Like you can't deny it. Now, why is that? I don't know. Is it because a lot of black people don't like to play hockey? Maybe they don't like to go into broadcasting. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far into it. Are they not being given an opportunity to get further in their careers? I don't know about that either. I will say, as interns, this is different. We've had a lot more black interns over the years recently than we had in the past. So, I mean, maybe there's a change in that. And maybe it's because they see more minorities are being given opportunities, So, but I don't think that's new. I just think more people are actually willing to step out on that ledge
Right.
and do it.
Right. And
Both from the people that hire minorities and the minorities themselves. So, I mean, I think like the world's changing and it may be super slow, but I do think that more and more people are willing to take the chance and say, look, this is what the new norm is. Let's embrace it instead of kind of hiding in the past.
Right. An interesting thing that you mentioned is the dynamic of blacks not necessarily playing hockey. When you look at certain sports, like the NBA, for example, the first black player was allowed and the color line was broken in the 1950s. And since then, it's a sport that's largely black. And even in the NFL, it's the same way. However, when you look at a sport like baseball, it hasn't had that same effect. Some people will say that it's a matter of interest and excitement, while others would point to socioeconomic values, meaning basketball, you pretty much only need a hoop and a ball, whereas baseball, you need a field, you need equipment.
And I think that's what it is. I mean, like, people want to make arguments, but let's just deal with in the truth. Yeah, I can play basketball by myself. You can play basketball yourself and get better. What are you going to do with a baseball by yourself? Throw it up and catch it? I mean, like that's the extent of what you can take a bat and hit it, but then you got to go run and chase it and get it back. And are you going to play it downtown? Are you going to play it in a city? You have to have the parks. You have to have the space. Hockey, not a lot of hockey rinks around, the
Right.
South. That's not going to be an opportunity, and that's where most of the black people live in the South. I mean,
Right.
There's not a ton of hockey to be played here. They're not. I don't know if they're playing soccer either, but again, you can kick a soccer ball with another guy. Baseball is one of those things that's just hard. I mean, it is laborious and intensive. You can throw a football with your friend. You can get better at the aspects of certain sports by yourself, and I think that is what increases their popularity.
Right. So when you talk about, more space and opportunity, another key aspect that people like to bring up is a money aspect. So in the sense that with basketball and football, it's pretty much you have to go through college, the pros, high school. Whereas baseball, it's not as clear cut because you have to go through the minors and you have to attend these camps, and the process is a lot more strenuous. Whereas when you look at inner city kids, people that are poor and that are looking for that quick buck and a way to get out, they probably see baseball or hockey as more difficult. Do you think that's...
Ain't nobody got time for that. Yeah, I mean, how long does it take you to get through the minor leagues in baseball? I mean, most people, even if you start your baseball career, it'll be at least 3 years before you get there. I mean, in the NFL, you're there immediately. In the NBA, the odds of you making it are far less, But again, it's instant gratification. Even if you don't make it, you can go play in Europe where you're treated like a star as well. So there's some alternative to that. I think everybody has that rock star life that they think they're going to have. Some people are blessed enough to be athletically gifted that they could actually pursue it to a certain degree. But, I mean, you also have to take advantage of the opportunities. You have to have help along the way. And, I think that's where the disadvantaged are at a disadvantage. You know, I mean, they're there for a reason. That's what this situation is. How can you get past it? I mean, you have to be superior in athletics. You have to kind of have a spotlight like you talked about earlier. You have to do it when it counts. I mean, you look at Leonard. Leonard's a great example of getting out, getting a brand, and then just riding it, but taking advantage of his opportunity by producing on the field.
Right. So we've discussed the demographics somewhat of sports, and while certain demographics are currently in place, as you see a lot of African Americans in football and basketball, some may feel that the certain positions don't necessarily reflect that. For example, the quarterback position, that's a position that it's not reflective of the demographics of the sport. And a lot believe that it's a reflection of stereotypes. A stereotype that's generally accepted based on research is that black athletes succeed more due to their physical traits and abilities, whereas whites succeed more to their intelligence. So the positions that are looked at as the smart or intelligent positions and the more visible positions is such as quarterbacks or a center might have a white player, whereas the athletic positions such as wide receiver or running backs or more so black positions. So how do you think we break or we get away from those stereotypes as we continue to evolve with the diversity within media and sports?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things where you just have to look past the stereotype. And that is on us as people. I mean, we have to look past me seeing you and being afraid because you're different than I am. And I think that's all it is. And I think a younger generation sees that. I think there's part of that generation that thinks it's still cool to be racist and against the grain. But for a large majority, I think most of your generation is very inclusive and understand. I don't see as many separate groups of the same color people as I used to. I see a lot more inclusive groups, and I think that's good. And I think that will go a long way towards dispelling the myths of the past. And I think what will ultimately happen is you'll just see people have success in the position and debunk that stereotype. You know, I mean, right. Doug Williams obviously, was huge, that first black Super Bowl winner. But guess what, man? He was just a good quarterback. I lived in D.C. when they did it. And there in D.C. it wasn't that big a deal because that's kind of who everyone was.
Right.
Like it was a majority black town. So it wasn't such a taboo thing. And it's a shame that they haven't gotten past those stereotypes. I think it's funny, you talk about the black quarterback and the white quarterback and the smart. Like has anybody looked at the offensive line? I mean, like you talked about center, right? When you're talking about, the guys that probably have to do the most thinking on the football field other than quick decision making like a quarterback, the offensive line, I think, is something that would be interesting. So really, if you wanted to see if there was any truth to it, look at that position group and see what it looks like. But I just think it's because it's a small sample size. You can look at Randall Cunningham and be like, oh, he was awesome because of his legs and his scramble ability. Well, he could sling it too, but there was just so few of them at the time, and I think that's kind of latched on, and people haven't really looked past it. So I just think it's going to be a broadening of the mind, more guys having more success at the position. And look, the other thing that we can't deny either is black head coaches in the NFL. I mean, there has to be a point where this just isn't a thing anymore. And I think it will eventually because you have so many assistants. They're going to eventually get their opportunities. I think it's better in college football, and I think eventually those guys will step up to those ranks, and it won't be a thing anymore. But, I mean, for the time being, it's a thing because, unfortunately, it is the reality, and people can easily just say, oh, that's what it is, when it's really not.
Do you think something like the Rooney Rule, which requires...
God, I hate that, because it just seems so patronistic, like, hey, you're my black friend, can I come interview you, even though I know you're not going to get the job, and it's so discrediting. Like, I understand the idea of the Rooney Rule, right? But like in theory it's great, but in practice I just think it's condescending, and I just wish they would interview people based on their merits and not be mandated based on their color. I mean, if you're going to do that, well, then let's pick one from every ethnicity, and then like let's just tick the boxes. Right. And I think that's crap. I don't know that maybe it helps the guy There's something on the radio yesterday which I thought was good. Skip Bertman was talking about, interviewing head coaches after Nick Saban left, and Bobby Williams was his assistant coach. He was with him at Michigan State. He's a black guy. He's been with him at Alabama still, everywhere he's gone. And Skip said, we need to interview a black guy. Bobby Williams wanted to interview. It was no problem. Bobby knew he wasn't going to get the job. Skip knew he wasn't going to get the job. But Skip said Bobby was using it for his next interview. So maybe there's some merit to it and some advantage to everyone involved. I hope that's the case, because I would hate for it to just be, hey, who do we know that's black? Oh, that guy. Let's go give him an opportunity, so we can fill our quota. I'd rather it be based on merit. Hey, that guy's great. Let's go interview him because he's a great coach, not because he's Hispanic, Asian, a woman. I mean, we're seeing it, women in the NFL and the referees. So it's eventually going to happen. I think as Cardinals have a female assistant as well.
Yes,
so
the first in the NFL as a female.
Mm-hmm.
Something you mentioned with the black quarterbacks, as you mentioned, a small sample size, it's framing is portraying an aspect of an issue as a reality in order to promote certain aspects of society. You mentioned that despite these guys being athletically gifted, that they were just great quarterbacks, but some people tend to look past that. For more recent examples, you have a guy like Deshaun Watson, who was widely regarded as the top collegiate quarterback, and he actually spoke on this issue, and he said that he is often referred to as a dual-threat quarterback, which is someone who utilizes his athletic and running ability in addition to passing. And Watson refers to dual-threat as a code word, and he says that it's a code word that somewhat diminishes his ability as a quarterback. And Bucky Brooks of the NFL Network says that it diminishes their standing as far as how they're viewed as a pro prospect. So he says that some guys have to fight that stereotype to prove others wrong of being a franchise quarterback. So how is it that someone that covers sports, how are they able to talk about someone who is athletically superior but not hinder the athlete in a certain way? Like, do you think that it's possible to do such things?
I don't know that you're going to hinder the athlete. I don't know that you're going to harm them. I mean, the tape is going to tell the story eventually, but I do think it's lazy, and dual threat is often, he's a real cerebral thinker, he's a gym rat, we do it. And look, it goes the same way for white guys. He's a gym rat. He's a workout freak. He's a, lunch pail kid. It's like, oh, he's not supposed to be good, but he is. So let's think of some way that we could talk about. He's sneaky fast. It's like, and we do it with black guys. Oh, he's articulate. Oh, that guy can talk. Wow, really?
Right.
Like no one else can talk in the world but that guy, and so I just think it's lazy, and I think it requires you to do your research, to use your vocabulary, to describe what they are, not just lean on a crutch that we've heard in the past. Hey, look, Danny Etling's a dual threat quarterback, I mean, he's running more than Brandon Harris is. One of them's white, one of them's black, but nobody's describing Danny Etling as a dual threat, So I mean, there is, and this is the other thing too, I don't want people to be afraid of words, because there is, if a guy's a zone read quarterback, that's a dual threat, I mean, if he can throw it, most of the time those guys can't,
Right.
I mean, they're gonna be the guys that run because they can't throw. So at some point you have to call it like it is, but you also want to stay away from just pigeonholing people, because that's the term of the past.
Right. And you mentioned that it goes both ways. This also happens with Stanford University's running back Christian McCaffrey, who last year he broke the record for NCAA most all-purpose yards in a season. And he says that he believes code words can diminish his athletic ability. He says that the word tough and hard-nosed is often used to describe white athletes, but athletic and explosiveness are not adjectives that are typically brought up when describing him. But he says if you look at the tape, as you mentioned, you can see that he is athletically superior and as explosive as his counterparts.
Yeah, again, it's just kind of lazy, like we talked about. Describe what they are, and what they are doing as far as a broadcaster goes. I think that's the best way to do it. And then try to. It's so hard though, especially if you're doing it, live in real time. You are going to fall back on some crutch words, but like shifty. That pertains to anyone. I don't know. I don't buy the diminishing thing because again, those guys are top of their position in college football right now, and I don't think they're sneaking up on anybody, right? And then nobody's like, they called Deshaun Watson, dual threat. He's not going to be the best quarterback in the draft. No, he's either going to do it because he's leading, Clemson to great success again this year, or he's not, and he's going to drop down some boards because you see some deficiencies in his game. And I think most people, again, are kind of getting past that because the game is changing. It is odd to see, super talented white running back. But again, you also have to think about where he's playing, who he's playing against. And I'm a Heisman voter. One of the things I always do when I go to vote is who do they have success against and how do they do it? And because that matters, like Missouri's coming in to play LSU this weekend. They just beat Delaware State 79-0, but it was Delaware State,
right?
So like, you have to put it in context, and I think that's the biggest thing. Is Missouri awesome and going to hang 80 on an SEC team? Probably not. Does that mean they can't play football at all? Probably not. They're probably pretty good. You might want to look into the numbers and see what they can do.
Right.
And so I think it takes that extra effort.
And when you talk about that extra effort, what are some things that you think are tangible that can perhaps speed up the process maybe, or do you think it's something that will just naturally happen over time, or do you think we need certain things specifically to happen?
Again, I don't think you should mandate anything. I think if we're working together and use Les as a great example. Hey, the offense has changed. Les hasn't changed. His offense is the same. So they made a move and they need to move their offense in a new direction. If we're working together, we're calling a game, and I'm just saying some crazy things. Like, man, I never thought I would see someone of that color, make that kind of play. Like, red flag, boom, that dude's never calling a game again. That just has to be kind of where it's at. You have to have the recognition of where we are in society and kind of let's move past some of the bigoted ideas of yesteryear, and let's move forward because I think that is the only way it'll improve, and you can't give, man, this is one thing that I will say the TV industry does. They give voice to the ignorant because, most people are smart enough to say, yeah, if you want to interview me? Nah, I'm good. Thanks. Unless you won the lottery, or something awesome's happened. If you're, approached by TV cameras, unless you have a really hot take, you're not going to really, jump out there and be like, hey, talk to me. But ignorant people, man, they're willing to say anything on TV. And we, unfortunately, are willing to put them on TV. Some of the dumbest things I've seen, the race riots or the protesting, that we've had here in Baton Rouge, they put them on TV. And I'm just like, man, that has no basis to what we are talking about today.
Right.
Let's keep it in perspective and context, people. I have a specific example in my mind, and it was mind-boggling that, civic leaders were standing next to this person that was saying these things and not being like, okay, your time on the microphone's done right now. Let's get, back on topic here.
So when it comes to people saying things that are a red flag, or you see things that may have a meaning, a stereotypical meaning or framing or things of that nature, how do you handle, or how do you as a person, or more importantly as a sports director, how do you handle things that may have a controversial or racial statement by athletes, coaches, or fellow media member? Yeah,
I think you just kind of have to call it out. It depends on how well you know the person. Like, if I don't know them, I'll just distance myself from them. But if I know them, I'll be like, hey, man, it's not where we want to go with that. Boy. Right? Boy is a classic example here in the South. Man, you can't say, look at that boy, or hey, boy, so I learned that pretty quickly. Boy has a different context depending on who you're talking to, So you just stay away from the words. And when you hear somebody that you're working with say it, or any words like that, that kind of have a dual meaning to different ethnicities, then you just want to kind of be aware of it, And dude, we're guilty of it, man, he speaks so well. It could, and here's the reality of it. It's not because he's black. It's because a lot of athletes can't talk, And
Right.
so we get caught up dealing with them every day, and we're like, oh, same terrible interview. Oh, that dude speaks so well. Yay, And so you kind of have to check yourself And most of the time, if you've been around long enough, you'll self-police it, and you'll realize, this isn't going to sound good. Let's not say it that way. Let's say it this way. And if you're new, then hopefully somebody is there to kind of enlighten you. And that's regionally as well. I'm sure there's things we say down here that wouldn't fly in Seattle. I'm sure there's things in New York that they do that wouldn't fly down here. So I think it's, again, context and just the thoughtfulness, really. That's the one thing, man. Like, just life in general. Like, you can be on the highway, you can be in the grocery store, you can be, in the corporate world. People have very little regard for other people these days. And I think it's all about what can I do with my time to further my interests and promote myself. And so take a step back and see, how do my actions affect other people? And I think that is ultimately what's going to move this conversation and this society forward.
And you mentioned that when someone says something that might not fly, if you know that person, you can pretty much say that you shouldn't say that. If they hear about the criticisms, but it doesn't really change, how do you perhaps end that cycle? Because, stereotypes have been in place since like the 50s. And when you talk about like certain code words, I'm sure we know about it or have heard about it a lot. So how do you perhaps tell that person?
If they work for me, then it's an easy conversation.
Right.
Like, hey, we're not doing that.
Right.
Do it again, we're going to have another conversation, and then it's going to be bad for you. That's just the reality of it if they work for you. If they're just if they're a peer, I don't know. I'll use an example, and it's not race-related at all. We were doing a press conference last week, and one of the photographers, I think for student media here, she was wearing like a sports bra and like a T-shirt with the sleeves cut off, and just some crappy outfit. And I told one of her friends, I was like, man, you need to tell her to dress a little bit more professionally, And her friend did tell her. And when she was walking by, and the girl's like, man, and she said something like, I don't have to do that. And I walked by and I heard her say it. And I was like, no, you really do. I was like, and so maybe it'll hit with her, maybe it won't. But I've done my part. The other girl did her part. And it's a situation where at least next time she goes, she's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. And hopefully that nugget sticks. That's all you can do. You can do your part. I'm not going to go find the girl at her house and figure out what she's wearing every day to school, but maybe it'll resonate with her. I think that's all you can do. There's no police. Ultimately, people that watch and consume the media will sound off on it. If it's a big enough issue, it'll get national attention. And we've seen it in the past where people lose their job. And I don't know that every single instance is warranted for a job loss. But like you said, if it's repeated, then certainly. You just have to be better than that in society today.
One thing you said is if that person works for you, then it's an easier conversation to have. When you talk about diversity as far as like higher ups, as far as sports directors or people in those hiring or higher positions, do you think that a lack of diversity there can affect, or does it affect, the perception of what's shown or what's said?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. If everybody looks like me and does the same things that I do, then we're going to report on the things that I do and the things that affect me. But if we get somebody that has completely different interests from me, they have a voice. And then it represents whatever those things are, and that's in the news and the sports. Weather's easy, right? Weather affects us all. But no, absolutely. And I think that is a problem, again, let's be real about it. So that's why, that again is kind of why you're trying to be reflective of your audience. We had Seth Lewis work for us. He was great. He was a great sounding board. He was fun for me because we could talk about race and it wasn't an issue. I'm leery of people that can't talk about race because that usually means you have an agenda that you're trying to hide. Right. Like if we can talk about race, that's great. Let's do it. I'm not afraid to do it. And so we would talk about that. But when I went to go hire someone else, I try to hire the best person. I tried to hire some person and they said no thank you. So then I went to the next person and it happened to be a female, and she came in and she said no thank you. So I just worked through my list of who the best is, and there happened to be a female and a black guy in there, and one of them said no thank you and one of them wasn't ready. So I had to go with a guy, unfortunately, that looks like me. It's not unfortunate because he's gifted, but it's still not what I would ultimately like to be. I would love to be more inclusive of the things that we can. So to that point, I now try to make a concerted effort to do things that I wouldn't normally do. I'm not gonna go to the Bluff on a Saturday, and watch a football game. But I know that's important to the people in this city.
Right.
So we try to make sure that is what we do. You know, I could care less about, girls' high school volleyball in my personal life, but I know there's a portion of the audience that might. So we might get one of those games, those kinds of things. I don't like tennis. Chris Price loves tennis, so he's going to do things on tennis. So again, it's how willing are you to get out of your comfort zone, understand others, their perspectives, and the way that everyone impacts one another.
And aside from the responsibility of people that work within media, as far as journalists, sports directors, or anyone that works within sports media, there also has to be some responsibility on the athlete themselves to be more aware. For example, in 2008, LeBron James did a shoot for Vogue magazine. He became only the third athlete and the first African-American male to hold that distinction. But the cover of the magazine received a lot of bad feedback because it drew a lot of similarities to a 1917 World War I recruitment poster, which showed a gorilla holding a young white woman, and the words were, "Destroy this mad brute." So in the position where the gorilla was, you similarly had LeBron James, and he was holding the lady, and his facial features, as far as like an angry grin or drawing similarities to the characteristics of a gorilla. LeBron James himself said that it was just, him having fun, and it was just pretty much just an innocent ordeal, whereas you had someone like Jamel Hill for ESPN come out and say that he has to be more aware of stereotypes and framing, and it was a bad depiction. So,
again, to me, that's someone with an agenda. When I look at you, I don't think of a gorilla. I think you have to want to go there, right? If I'm looking at a magazine cover and the first of LeBron James, and I don't remember this, so this is a good conversation to have. Is the first thing I think of is a gorilla. That's me, man. That's a problem with me. That's not a problem with LeBron in a photo shoot. No, if they're sitting there touching up the cover, and making his features more white, or making his features elongated to represent a monkey, well, then that's on them. But I just think people want to have an argument. If there's anything in this society that we were talking about earlier with social media, that people want to be controversial and out of that box. And I said it earlier, people want to be racist, people want to be, antagonistic. You can't give the idiots a voice, and you can't lend them your time. And I think that's that whole Skip Bayless, what is it, First Take?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't watch that show because I don't care about their combative opinions. I care about sports. And so they're trying to bait you into these topics, with these hot takes. Was it his and hers now, right?
Yes.
It's hot take society. Man, I don't need a hot take. I want a hot game. Give me some athletics on the field of play. That's why we keep score, because we know who wins and loses. I don't need you then to tell me who's winners and losers because of their, appearance, their foxtail on Cam Newton, that's funny, what the hell, the guy with the hat and the glasses at Oklahoma City, whatever they're wearing,
Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, thank you. It's not, to me, that's not, that's great, but that's like People Magazine stuff. That's TMZ stuff. I think that is the problem, is that we're lending voice to these people. And then, this many people watched this. Well, it's because there was nothing else on. Give them some options of something. Don't put all the damn games on, at the same time. Spread them out, and people will watch them, athletics-wise. Newsflash, there's another portion of the world that could care less about that, about athletics. Just like we're not real hot into politics. They're not hot into athletics.
And it's funny that you mentioned certain media personalities. And
I tried to pick a white and a black one. Did you notice?
Yeah. But media personalities and the credibility. So when you talk about credibility for certain people in the media, audiences tend to trust that person based on how much they like them. So if they like them, they're more likely to accept those things as being truthful.
Or agree with them.
Agree with them, yes. So I guess that's more of a responsibility from the audience standpoint.
Well, but to your point that they're going to, like you might like Michael Smith and Jamel Hill. I personally can't stand Chris Berman, and it's not because he looks like me. It's just because I don't like his shtick. So I think again, it's up to the consumer to see past the puffery, and get to, I guess, what are they really telling me here? Is it something, and do I ultimately agree with them, or is it just you trying to further a message to gain viewers? In TV we do sweeps. We have sweeps. We try to put all these great stories into these 4 months of the year, to get viewers. To me, that's so bad. Like, why don't we just try to do good TV every day? Like, why are we loading up? Hey, we gotta come watch us now because it's important, because this is how we're gonna make money off of, telling people how much people watch our TV station. No, let's just do the best job we can do every day. And if people want to watch, great. And you know what? If people don't want to watch, then I'll be out of a job, and that's okay too. I'm not saying everyone has to agree with me or like my sports or like the way I do it. I'm just going to try to do it the best way I can. And then when I see another way that I like, I'm going to take that and incorporate it. And maybe you like it. And if you don't like it, then that's fine. You can tell me you don't like it too, and I will try to do less of it.
Are there any methods you say that can perhaps ensure that something is unbiased? Let's say if
intelligence. I mean, again,
it sounds simple,
right?
But if there are these issues, then I guess it all goes back to, like you said, lending the microphone or the opportunity to ignorant folks. But yeah, that's a big deal with certain. I guess for the people that are ignorant or don't know any better, what are some methods or tactics that they can use to ensure that they are being unbiased?
Oh my goodness. Keep their mouth closed? No, I mean, like, I don't know that there's no substitution for intelligence. I mean, and but again, and that doesn't necessarily, I don't want it to have a negative connotation, because here's something, right? I'm on Twitter, follow athletes, and they're tweeting out stuff all the time. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? I am ignorant to what they are doing, because a lot of times it's just rap lyrics, right, and I have no idea what the hell it means. And I'm like, oh God, what is Leonard talking about now? He's whatever, because I have no idea. So I'm like, is this real life? Oh no, wait, it's a rap lyric. Cool, okay, and so the ignorance can play to even the intelligence. Anything that you could guard against in those situations, just try to walk a mile in their shoes, I guess. Try to see it from the perspective. Anytime somebody's going to tell me something, I'm going to listen to what they're saying, but then I'm also going to try to figure out, why are they telling me that? Is it self-preservation? Like the debates, I mean, we're sitting up here and we're just like, come on, people, like, we're not morons. You have to do better than this. And so I think that there is that expectation of, just because they're telling you, don't believe it. Because everybody isn't always altruistic in their intentions.
Okay, so aside from the folks that don't know better, or those that don't take advantage of the opportunity,
some people don't care, right? I mean, that's the other group. They can just, hey, whatever they say, I'll just take it at face value.
Or those that don't care. Is there a better way to perhaps highlight those that actually get what's going on, or those that?
I mean, I think that's where social media is great, because you can promote, ideas. I don't know. I guess I saw it. Colin Kaepernick. This is a great debate, right? This whole thing, because I think if you listen long enough, people will tell you their true intentions. And I think you're getting to see where people stand. Mike Ditka came out and like, you don't like it, get the hell out of the country. Jesse Ventura came out. He's like, hey, man, I don't agree with it, but that's what I fought for. Good for you. And I think a lot of, I think LeBron just did the same thing, right? He said, like, I don't agree with it. I understand what he's saying. I'm going to do my thing. And that's good. If anything, that I talk about the TMZ aspect of sports, but, at some point, if you're going to move past this, it's good to have people that have thought out a response to it. Greg Popovich, had a fantastic, give and take with some reporters in San Antonio. And I haven't really sounded off on the Kaepernick thing because, I don't know that anybody really cares about my hot take on it. But I thought it was worth retweeting and putting that out there, finding the article and tweeting it out so that he would know, or so that other people that might, kind of be on the fence could read it and have a fresh take from someone who reasoned out a thought.
As far as, let's say, diversity in baseball. So I believe it was Andrew Jones. He spoke on the Kaepernick situation, and he said that you won't see as many black or minority players come out to support Kaepernick in baseball because it's a white man's sport, and there's a tradition and a certain way that you do things, from the bat swings to the way that everything
inside baseball. I mean, what do you get? You get hit in the wallet, it's all right. You get hit in the shoulder, it's we're fighting. So I mean, no, there is a fluidity to that game and intricacies that only they understand. And it's a baseball thing is actually something. And I could see that because guess what? The majority of the roster is white, and you are definitely going to stand out if you're at a Major League Baseball game. And you're doing something differently because that's kind of mom baseball, America apple pie, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. I could understand the leeriness of it, but if he feels strongly about it, then good for Andrew Jones for speaking up. And again, protests can be in many different forms. Kaepernick chose that way to do it, and look at what it's done. Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, at least it's kind of furthered his message. Unfortunately, and I think this is where the spin cycle comes in, people are now taking it as being a patriotic thing, an anti-American thing, that guy sucks thing. When in what he's trying to do is point out the racial inequalities as it pertains to police. I think that there are, great ways to get the message out there, any message out there. I don't disagree with this one. I think that if that's what he wants to do, then that's his right to do it. If they're allowing him as their employer and employee relationship to do it, then great. If the NFL said, hey, no, look, everybody stands, or you guys can stay in the locker room and we'll do the national anthem, however you want to do it, then that's their right too, as an employer. It's not. I don't think that I think that's the code of society that we live with, and Martin Luther King was great because it was civil disobedience. I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I am doing it for a reason, and hopefully that will shine through as you do whatever you need to do to me, and unfortunately it was extremes in that degree in that day and age, but look at what it did. Look at the progress that it made. And I know it didn't make a ton of progress. I know we haven't arrived, the thing. But God, I mean, I don't think anyone can deny, the sins of the past and where society was and where it is today.
Yep, you talk about progress and us not necessarily being where we want to be or haven't arrived, but there is progress. It all starts with dialogue such as this and things to actually get a conversation going and getting tangible ideas going and things like that. So I think that platforms such as this and conversation between the audience and different media personalities or athletes to actually get an understanding, because a lot of times things can be as simple as a simple misunderstanding. So like you say, some people just don't take advantage of those opportunities. Any last or finishing remarks from yourself?
No, thanks for having me. I would just invite you to continue the dialogue and then educate people. I mean, like I said, there's no substitute for intelligence, and the understanding that it's okay to be different. It's okay for you to like what you like and for me to like what I like, and we don't have to infringe upon each other to enjoy that, right? Like, I mean, do your thing, I'll do my thing. If our things can mesh together, then we'll do them together. But it's okay also if we don't want to, like, I mean, I'm not going to hold it against you. But I think you can't be afraid of one another, like we're far more similar than we are different, and there's no reason for us to just look at the differences. So thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Cauble, WBRZ.